Howdy, howdy. Welcome to another episode of the Watching Privacy Show, number 20. Big 2-0 for us. We got Brent and Raju with us as always. And let's dive right in. I think we got a couple news pieces to kind of talk about this week. Right off the bat, we kind of covered the story a couple weeks ago. Algorithmic tracking is damaging mental health of UK workers. It's not really just UK workers, probably could be said for people around the world. But basically, the UK is trying to come up with some sort of legislation that lets basically the employees that are getting tracked and surveilled in different ways to have a say basically in it and to make sure that companies take into account things like mental health. I don't think we really kind of covered that aspect of it. We talked about kind of employees not knowing that they were being tracked and to what extent and kind of the lack of opt-out options for them. But then there is the flip side of how you're being tracked and how, I guess, neurotic that makes you. And ultimately, I mean, at the end of the day, once you find out how you're getting tracked, then you're going to start gaming the system. I mean, there's a lot of, even at the beginning of the pandemic stuff, I remember there was a lot of these things you can buy on Amazon that would like move your mouse around like every 30 seconds because they don't want you to go like idle on Teams or Slack or whatever, right? So you want to show that you're like connected and plugged in so your mouse will move and it shows that you're there. So, I mean, there are some aspects to it. All in all, I guess it can't hurt. I mean, it's got to be a good thing. But what did you guys think?
I mean, I understand the idea behind it, but I have no idea how it can be turned into law.
Yeah.
And because the definition of algorithm, what is the definition of algorithm? It can get really vague quickly, and you'll see the second level and third level impacts of it. And I don't know how that'll turn out to be, particularly thinking about the second and third order effects. Yeah, I mean, I'm generally not a fan of some of these or algorithms judging humans. So it's humans created algorithms, and then these algorithms are judging humans now
Yeah.
without context.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
You know, I think it's great that I hope that workers get a say in how this stuff is used because they're immediately impacted by this, and I can see a day where, particularly when you're working in some kind of a unionized situation, where this is going to be part of the union discussions. Like, don't be using these tracking algorithms against us, or we want to say in how these policies are developed, because just like Raju said it, I mean, these algorithms end up impacting you in a way that maybe in certain instances humans don't. And kind of, isn't that what algorithms, they do numbers great, but you still need some kind of human intervention to go along with the more accurate numbers, I guess, because we're more than just made up of a bunch of digits. We're actually, living and breathing, and we bleed. And so we're not just a bunch of numbers. And so I could definitely see, some union discussions. This kind of stuff is going to come up, and it'll be really fascinating to see how organizations deal with union members saying, "Oh, we want $18 an hour, or we want $20 an hour," and we want say into how these algorithms are developed and applied to us too.
I mean, it is, I would say, early stages of news. A lot of these things, I feel like it might just be, a story that's floated, but then the practicality of it ever actually coming to fruition, and kind of like what Roger mentioned as well, just the realisticness of, how it actually gets drafted. And because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to probably be the companies that have some corporate interest in forming this law. It's not like the employees are out here, shaping that legislation really. And so I can't imagine. I'd imagine anything is kind of a good thing, better than free for all. But it's also with these things, I feel like it's better to believe it when we actually see it, rather than just kind of, someone introduces something about some topic all the time, and just to kind of get a little bit of media wave on it.
But I will say this: I can see it where, if I were in a union and I weren't as worried about that as I am about getting more money, maybe even say, "Hey, look, you give us 25 or $30 an hour, we'll let that slide," because there's always a price, But I do like the idea of this becoming something that needs to be discussed and thought about a little bit more thoroughly.
I mean, to Brent's point earlier regarding metrics, right? We are in that era of metric driven and algorithm driven rat race. And where that ends up, if people are smart, if you measure someone by metrics, well, they will figure out a way to game the system. And if you measure an Amazon, let's say a delivery person, by the number of packages they deliver per hour, well, they will beat the system. What are the second and third order effects? As a customer, don't be surprised if your packages are thrown out the vehicle at your curbside. Well, because that is not being measured. The quality of delivery is not being measured.
Yeah.
So your number of deliveries are measured. So you'll get the number, but then your return rate might go high, packages missing might go high. Then you'll probably introduce some other metric to go down that rabbit hole. That'll open another thing. There is always a human element, to highlight Brent's point, that cannot be ignored. And we have gotten into this data-centric mindset, metric-centric mindset, and an algorithm-centric thing. And I think that is the issue. Metric-driven measurement is good for machines, not humans, because humans are really good at gaming the system. And if you're trying to do it for humans, well, it typically doesn't end well. I mean, I actually have regarding the algorithms themselves. Most of these algorithms are, I would say, centralized, like a Facebook defining an algorithm or Google defining an algorithm. These are all centralized algorithms trying to control or serve a decentralized mode. I actually have a broader issue with that, because end of the day, algorithms might work for, say, generating information, generating clicks, generating comments, which some of these companies are after. That certainly, it makes sense. But what algorithms don't understand is they don't understand the societal context. They don't understand the cultures. They don't understand the subcultures. And there are a lot of subtleties in those cultures and subcultures, like a word in one language might be an abuse word in another language. Algorithms do not understand that regional subtleties, language subtleties. I think that is where algorithms cannot understand the human nature and the effect of community and a subculture thing. So algorithms might be good at developing a few things, but the second and third order effects, like the Amazon delivery example, cannot be predicted by the algorithms. So I actually have those. There is an issue with algorithms, centralized algorithms, trying to impact this decentralized world with subtle cultures and subtleties out there. And that is one of the reasons I believe we do not need a centralized social network throughout the world. I think it will give rise to local, context-specific, culture-specific social networks. And when I won't be surprised if the world goes towards the direction China has gone, where they have their own social network. Every country might go down this path. I think that's where I think we are headed. But because a centralized algorithm cannot control and cannot serve the needs of a decentralized society. Anyway, I'll stop my rant there. Going off.
I mean, one thing I'll circle back to what you were saying at the beginning of the rant was on the Amazon delivery thing. It's kind of a tangent on my part too, but it always surprised me that Amazon wanted to basically control as much of like the let's say customer experience on their own. And when you deal with USPS or FedEx or UPS, you don't control that delivery aspect. And for some company that like claims to be so customer centric, how you don't try to like make that delivery experience probably the best thing is like mind blowing to me. You're optimizing for like package drops, but like Raju said, only recently do they start taking a picture of the package because theft and delivery issues were such a big deal. But if someone rang the doorbell, I would say 90% of the time, nobody rings the doorbell when I get an Amazon package anymore. That's because the person's in such a rush that they're just in and out very quickly. And if someone just rang the doorbell, or if you're not home, it's like, hey, maybe we'll text you and be like, hey, where do you want me to put this, or figure something out. Like, there's a lot of ways to just make that last mile delivery experience probably above and beyond, because they're the only company that actually controls that delivery of physical goods, compared to outsourcing it to UPS or FedEx or USPS. And so they have the potential for like a real differentiator, and it's something that they just like do not care for, either out of greed or numbers or volume or whatever it is. But yeah, weird tangent, but it's always just confusing that they don't try to make that experience better. They're just literally the same as the other guys, and maybe even worse just because of how they deliver things. But I don't know. It's just like a odd tangent again. But yeah, I guess we all have our own rants today. Brent, what's your rant today?
I'm going to reserve my right for ranting a little later on, but you guys have done a good job of showing the way, so I'll be ready.
I like that. Reserve the right for rat. I like that.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. We talked about this subject a while ago when WhatsApp was under a little bit of scrutiny about decrypting encrypted messages and stuff like that. So this Wired article came out, and basically they're talking about sharing metadata of the metadata is crucial for informing product design that will fight misinformation without allowing security backdoors. That's a lot of words that I don't think really sound good on surface, but don't really mean anything good when you actually understand it. And it's kind of like time old story. The governments are trying to control some of this conversation that's happening through encrypted channels, and they're saying that misinformation is obviously bad, which it is naturally, but I mean, they want to try to curtail it as much as they can. So they're trying to come up with the ways of, I think, Brent, you had like the next slide that talks about how the messages can be like decrypted and then scanned basically on the device itself, and then somehow anonymously shared back and says it's right or wrong. I think it's a dangerous path in general. And I mean, honestly, like, I feel like the whole like misinformation thing, it's like one of those things is really bad, but in the name of it, you're going to give up a lot more in terms of, like, I feel like when I was in school, they would say like, the way you fight misinformation is basically more information or better information. And, the best ideas kind of generally win in, an open market like that. But here, once you start trying to do these kind of like scans and decrypting and, again, it's all based on an algorithm. So you get flagged by something that may or may not be right, or something that's misinformation today and maybe truth 6 months down the line. It's just a messy situation. But I think governments are more and more trying to plant these kind of stories and kind of fear monger a little bit on this topic to try to get these companies to kind of comply and get their fingers in whatever information they can. Did you guys see anything different, or pretty much same lines?
Generally, there are abusers in any platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it is typically a small percentage of those abusers.
Yeah.
So it's always a small percentage of abusers, a large percentage of sufferers. Mm-hmm. A good example is TSA, right? Sure.
Yeah.
There was a small percentage of abusers. Now, 10 plus years into it, or I should say 20 years into it, 20 years into it, we are all still suffering the results of it. And governments and these companies, they use that abusers as an example to basically monitor and, in this case, surveil any of these. Now, in some cases it makes sense, but let's just say protecting the privacy of individuals is not in the best interest of the platform providers like Facebook or Google. Signal is an exception, but let's just say it is in their best interest to collect and surveil for other reasons. But unlike maybe TSA or some of the others, these platform providers have different motives. But I think that this is a problem where once there are some abusers, that abuse will be used as an excuse to basically go ahead and surveil everyone in this, because there are secondary benefits that are extremely good for these platform companies. But once the surveillance is in, there's no going back, and that's the issue. Once it is in, there's no going back. You can always have some additional rules and additional things that you can apply to restrict the surveillance. But when that restricting the surveillance is not in the best interest of the platform, that won't happen anyway.
Yeah. Um, I think I mentioned this last week. I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe every show we've done since we talking about this stuff. Um, Data isn't enough anymore. It's you need data about the data, and then you need more data about that data about the original piece of data, and then you need to collect as much of that as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the metaverse is already upon us in terms of metadata. I mean, you can turn this data into money and to all these different things, and these platforms. I mean, the more we go digital, the more data there is, which means there's more metadata, and there's more reason for these companies to want even more data. And we're just at the beginning of this. I mean, when you think about it, because there's still way more transactions or interactions that take place, uh, face to face, that they want access to. I mean, they still want more and more of our interactions to go digital because it creates more and more data and metadata. And so platforms like, the ones that we always talk about, it's almost like they are disincentivized to, to try to keep things, more traditional in nature because they make more data, which creates more money opportunities for them in the long run. So I don't know. And these governments want the data too, as we will probably talk about, if not later today, then definitely on another episode coming up. So I feel like I used to be so positive before this show came.
We'll have a
You
couple
guys are
positive stories.
tearing me apart.
I mean, one good thing,
All right.
even WhatsApp added like a little tag that says like forwarded many times whenever a message is like obviously forwarded many times. That was like a nice little addition because I mean, my parents will send me stuff that they get from someone that obviously sent it forwarded it many times. And, like once a month, my dad or mom will send me like a article about how like the IRS is like scamming you or something like that, and like mom, like if this was forwarded that many times, like you would get it in a news article, not like a WhatsApp message. Like that's not where something's going to happen. But that's one step in terms of like kind of compromising it. But even then, something forwarded multiple times, many times, that I mean, I'm sure the privacy of that message itself is probably protected to some extent. I haven't really ever
Mm.
looked into how that kind of works, but if they have to know how or the content of that message was forwarded many times, and so at some point that message was obviously decrypted, probably on like the client side of one of the devices, and then tracked to show one way or the other. That's an interesting
Let
thing
me
to
just
dig
bring up one
into.
more thing,
True.
just because this stuff just makes you think constantly. How many times have you received a text message from somebody where they took a screenshot of the person or thing that they were talking to? So that person doesn't even know that you're talking to somebody, you might be doing a Zoom call or whatever, and you think it's just you and them. And next thing you know, I'm getting a text message from somebody showing me a picture of who they're talking to. It's like, man, and that's just more data, and then that's something, oh, this picture was taken and who was in it because you got facial recognition, and what time was that taken, what kind of device was that taken. I mean, look how much data gets created from just the simple act of that, and the other person might not even know. And
I'll one up.
that doesn't
I'll one
even
up.
have anything to do with Facebook.
I'll one up you one on this, Brett, because when you take a screenshot and you send it to the person you took a screenshot of, rather than the person you were supposed to send it to, that's always a good conversation starter. You send a screenshot to that person, it's like, why do you take a screenshot of this conversation? And it's always downhill from there.
I mean,
Is
they
that
can.
my rant? I think that was
Maybe.
my rant. So I just thought I'd put that.
I think WhatsApp and others may have an option, may have a way to restrict the forwards, especially if you're forwarding it to groups, larger groups,
Yeah.
especially with thousands of it. I mean, I'm not a big WhatsApp user. Well, I still haven't accepted their terms and conditions. But I switched to Signal. So, but yeah, I was waiting for them to force me to accept terms and conditions to delete the app. So I haven't deleted the app yet, and I haven't accepted it. It's not like I get a lot of messages on WhatsApp too. But I think there are ways to restrict it. But as I was saying, it's not in their best interest to restrict it, and that is
Yeah.
part of the problem.
Exactly.
your account is probably like the bane of like 3 WhatsApp engineers, like, daily problems. Like, how come this one user is just like in this limbo zone? Like, either accept or get out, one of the two. Don't just stay here.
But it doesn't cost them anything, and there's always the opportunity. Maybe he'll come on board. Why smash him completely out of the opportunity ranks? Let him just sit there. Eventually, he'll come to us.
Yeah.
His
Yeah,
data will come to
I
us.
have a plan B. iPhone has a secondary SIM card that I can put in a different country's number, and if I have to, there are options.
Yeah, true. Unless WhatsApp can detect how many SIMs or numbers are on your phone.
I'm sure
Probably,
they know.
yeah, not surprising.
Yeah. Good Lord.
All right. Well, I guess a little bit more on kind of the government angle, scooter data collection. I'm not really sure why this is kind of surprising in general, because I know Uber and Lyft share like a lot of real time traffic information and ride information with cities, and that was a big, I think, point of contention earlier on. I guess as they were maybe like 5-7 years ago, as they were getting bigger. But LA basically requires companies to share real-time geolocation data about each trip and full ride route within 24 hours. Uber sued the city over these regulations in 2020, ended up dropping the litigation after it sold its bike and scooter sharing business later that year. And so, I mean, does this make sense that the city would have this information? I guess, but I mean, it's not like you don't know that, like, geolocation and trip details are being tracked and logged and categorized. So it's not like magic or like a surprise, I don't think. But is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Seem kind of
I'm surprised this is a surprise.
yeah.
Simple. The rule is very simple. If it is connected, data is being collected. Period. There's no, So
That's a bar, Raju. That is a bar in terms of a rap line. That right there is killer. We need to make a T-shirt up on that one. That was good. Sorry that I had to jump in because that really got me.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Whether we talked about, now we are talking about scooters, we talked about TVs, we talked about smart assistants, we talked about, accelerometers and any device that is connected directly or indirectly, all the data is going to be collected and it's going to make its way into multiple sources. We just have to take that for granted.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to pop up. Let me bring this back up here because let's see. I think it's this slide here. Yeah, you talked about how Uber dropped the suit because I guess somebody, something happened. I don't know what, but the quote still gets me. That bottom quote: real-time in-trip geolocation data is not good for planning bike lanes or figuring out deployment patterns in different neighborhoods or dealing with complaints about devices that are parked in the wrong place. What it's good for is surveillance. Basically, collecting all that data, and they probably don't even do anything by way of, creating new bike lanes, but they collected the data. And why do they collect the data? Because eventually they'll be able to do something with that data. Probably not all the things that they were saying they may do with that data, but when you have the data, you have the opportunity to do something with it. And that's something that we should, how the government goes through the budgetary process and you have to spend the money on the line item that you said that you were going to spend the money on. You can't just, hey, give me $10 billion and don't worry about how I spend it. We'll work it out later. No, you've got to detail it right then and there. And then if you don't spend it on that, it goes away. They need to start treating this data like that. If you have to be very particular and specific about what you plan to use this data with. And if you don't use it for that, then there's got to be some kind of mechanism to make it go away, because it's not right for it just to be sitting there collecting while they figure out how to monetize it later.
Right.
That's my second rant. I think I'm going to stick away. That's my last rant.
Maybe we'll open up for a third one at the end. But speaking of LA, I think the next story is actually a good segue too, because there was a Trader Joe's basically out there that I guess caught a lot of flack. Honestly, the story doesn't really have anything to do with the Trader Joe's. I think they just kind of put it in the headline to make it sound interesting.
Right.
but there's a parking garage or something like that next to the Trader Joe's. And I feel like a lot of us have probably seen this nowadays, especially in like downtown areas. It's no longer like a meter to pay for the parking. It's now download some app and pay through the app basically. And so there was this app that was at this garage, and to use the app, you obviously have to register, and then the app itself wants to track you in 15 different ways in terms of your location and your movements and probably access to your local network and who knows what all else, right? And yeah, one of the lines is your browsing activity may be tracked across different websites and different devices or apps, right? So like, what does your parking app really need to track you across multiple apps and websites, right? And they'll say it's for like user experience and to provide like a better customer journey or something nonsense along those lines. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the rise of these like parking apps in general have been not very good news. Like, gone are the days where you can just put like a couple dollars in a meter or a machine or something like that and type in like whatever slot you're in, or get a ticket printed and call it a day. But now these apps are a lot more prevalent, especially a lot of cities are doing it too. I'm pretty sure in Austin here we have an app that does meter parking for city streets. And you all obviously all that information is being collected and tracked and stored and repackaged. And then in this case, even in the terms and conditions of the parking application, technology partners may share data such as your browsing patterns, geolocation, device identifiers, and will match the information of the browser and devices that appear to be used by the same person. And so, I mean, they kind of said the quiet part out loud. I guess they kind of have to, maybe from a legal perspective, but it's something we've been saying for a while. But are you guys a fan of these convenience parking apps, or are they more of a nuisance?
Well, I would say I had the exact experience with Trader Joe's in Austin. I try to avoid downtowns like a plague, but the one time I go to Trader Joe's, or actually an adjacent shop, they say they have a Trader Joe's parking out there, and I have to download an app, and then I have to go through that process. So everything kind of hit home for me as I was going through this article. It is trade. I mean, my perception is I remember Trader Joe's and that association with that app. They force me to install the app or whatnot, and they have a QR code conveniently in the parking lot, and there's no alternative. And then of course I just go out, and after I'm done, I immediately delete the app and whatnot. That left a bad taste in my mouth. I mean, I generally avoid downtowns, and this is another reason to avoid downtowns, where these experience with parking lots and whatnot. And these apps are crap.
Yeah, we didn't even get there. Like, these are not well made, well designed, high security, high privacy in mind. They're just like slapped together.
I mean, they were talking about the Metropolis parking app. I don't know if you guys saw how they describe themselves. They call themselves an AI and computer vision startup to modernize parking and empower the future of mobility.
Gotta hire that marketer.
Something I thought I saw reimagine parking or something like that in there. I was like, really? Do we really need to reimagine parking? Can I just get into a spot, park the car, get the hell out, get back in and leave when I need to? Why do we need to reimagine so many things? Okay, I feel another rant coming.
There you go.
But yeah, Metropolis. I think the article mentioned that they have a 4,000 word privacy policy. And I did check it out, and I have to admit, it's right. It's easy to read. It's very they nicely formatted. Put it right out there. You can't be surprised by what they're doing if you go to that policy statement. But the fact that they're doing it, like, let me put this last up, because I think this was the money quote from the article. If data mining isn't its primary revenue stream, as Metropolis seems to insist, what is? I mean, really. I bet their business model documented as long as that privacy policy thing. And so we know it's almost like what Raju says on a weekly basis. Once you dip your toe into advertising, you become, an advertising company first versus whatever the heck you were before. And these guys are on the way, because they're not just going to be sitting on this data. Their privacy policy states, yeah, we have third-party partners, and we do share that with them. And
I mean, they raised $60 million to make like a glorified form that collects like, I don't even know somebody's name. I really just need to know what number spot did you park in, how long do you want to be here, and give me your money, basically. There's only 3 fields of information you really need. Everything else is irrelevant. I can make this thing in like 15 minutes using some like free software online. And these guys are raking in $60 million in investment, which means they're valued obviously significantly more. Not a good sign, I'd say, for anyone using them.
I see where this is going. When now parking lots have become, surveillance places where they're using that information. Once you go up the parking lot, there is a digital board somewhere that is going to display your personalized ad. I don't know if you guys are familiar. Some of the displays out there that are in airports and whatnot have a Bluetooth beacons in there that try to detect and try to communicate with your phones.
Yeah.
They know and they try to know who is there and how many people are surrounding that, so that to their advertisers they provide reports on how many people and what are their demographics that went by to collect the bag at the baggage station out there, right, at the airport.
Yeah.
Those are already there, those are already live, and this is another form of it. And fast forward, now that surveillance has come to parking lot, it's a matter of time before it comes to our freeways and roads. Well, this particular car with this car number just drove past, so I'm going to optimize the billboard, that is upcoming billboard for this particular person. Well, it's coming.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I mean,
Let's go to the next one, please.
All right. This one was across the ways as well over in China. So some consumer group questions Tencent over data privacy policy for WeChat personalized ads. And so I'm not really sure. Surprisingly, this consumer rights group seems to have some level of success because they were able to get this WeChat app to like optimize or change their flow for how you turn off personalized ads, because it was like a convoluted process before and they made it a little bit simpler. So they must have some pull, which is pretty impressive on its own. But yeah, this is kind of the money quote that Brent put on screen here. So 1.26 billion monthly active users. They can turn off ad recommendations based on behavioral data. And of course, I mean, I thought the last line was kind of a good thing to be transparent on. You're not going to see less ads because you turn off this behavioral data thing, but they might be less relevant, which I think is kind of what people are okay with to an extent. I mean,
that was one part. Actually, there is another quote in that article that stood out for me, where the Consumer Council requested clarity on whether Tencent has stopped collecting user data or whether it would continue collecting the data but not use it if users opt out of personalized ads. This is a point that Tejas makes frequently, where not showing ads does not mean you're not collecting the data.
They're not collecting data.
You paying for someone and not seeing ads does not mean they're collecting the data. And the fact that ads are not personalized doesn't mean that data is not being collected. In both cases,
and it couldn't be personalized on some other service too, right? Tencent's obviously a massive company. Just because you don't see personalized ads in WeChat doesn't mean you're not seeing them in 30 other places.
Yep. So I think that is that the same thing. By default, as a user, assumption is all of this data is being collected.
So basically, if you don't accept the terms, then we're still going to show you ads. They just aren't going to make much sense to you. They're not going to be relevant, but you're not getting out of the ads. So that, to me, I think it's positive that they're just putting it out on Front Street like that. But the net effect is, my overall experience, you just don't care. You just want to either want my data, or you're going to make my life miserable when I use your app, basically, which is not the exact way you should go with this, but okay, I get it.
As we talked the previous thing, they're making money both ways. You can pay for it and you won't see the ad, but we'll still collect the data and we'll still use that and we'll make money. There might be at some point there might be a second level subscription, one level subscription to not show you ads, another level subscription to not collect the data. So the second one is going to be a premium.
Yeah, I'm sure significant premium. And I mean, even in that kind of
situation, YouTube premium. So I'm a perfect example of that. I mean, I am on YouTube constantly. I have YouTube premium. I don't see the ads, but they're getting all my data and all my, information and using that to make money on another somebody who doesn't mind the ads or the suggestions or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's like, damn, that's a great business model if you can, get away with it. And yeah, some folks are able to do that. Yeah, it's amazing.
Man, I sent on a completely tangent. I sent my dad like a video on YouTube about how to like reset like the oil change time on their car, like whatever, like the alert that pops up. And so like I was on the phone with him as he was like clicking on the video to like walk through it and how to do it. And it's like a 2-minute video, not even, I don't think. And then there was 2 ads in the beginning, and then there was an ad in the middle of the video, and then there was another ad after the video ended, and like the guy like got off, like was like thanks for watching, and then there's another ad, and I was like, there's like 4 ads in a 2-minute video, and it was just like, oh, like, and then I mean, my dad just like pulled it up on his phone, so like there's no like good ad blocking really for YouTube on your phone, unless you have an Android phone. That's probably the biggest perk of it, or you paid the devil like Brent does.
But even when you pay the devil, like I do, the content creators are putting their own ads and things and sponsors in there. So, and I'm actually more okay with that than I am with the automated spam ad stuff. But there's no way around it. Everybody is an ad business model to a certain extent.
I think there's a browser extension
about it.
There's like a browser extension or something that's called Sponsor Block or Sponsor Scrub or something like that. And basically, when you're watching a YouTube video, when it detects like a sponsor clip, from the creator itself, it'll just like skip over it. So people have figured out quite a bit around it.
Interesting. Okay, Sponsor Blocker. That's
something like that. I'll find out the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things that I'm glad that you brought up, because we need stuff like that to share with people from time to time.
I mean, the broader, at a macro level, the reason we are seeing all of these ads and surveillance is because marketing, reachability. These companies have ability to reach 1 billion users overnight, and that is the reason people are opting for it. And if you look at why do we see more ads, because there are lots of advertisers. Why are so many advertisers? Because there are a lot of companies out there trying to reach the audience. Why are there so many companies out there? Because there's a lot of funding that is going in there in the market. Why is there a lot of money out there? Well, there is a lot of money being printed on we are talking about trillions out there. So it goes back to some of the economics out there. And at some point, we won't see as many ads. Let's just say that. And I hope we are at the worst of the times when it comes to advertising. Google won't be happy. Facebook won't be happy. But then they'll figure out other ways to monetize it. But I think there are other economic effects, and these are basically the downstream effects of some of the global moves.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Tejas, should we count that as a smooth rant? Because he didn't really raise his voice, but he was on a roll there. I'm going to say that was a smooth rant.
No, that's more like a stream of consciousness. But the rants have cut into a little bit of time, so we can jump into, I guess, our deeper topic. We'll spend a few minutes on at least. There's this article on Wired, Amazon's dark secret, and it has failed to protect your data. I would say brace yourself, because this was a long read. It took a while to even load on my computer, and then I scrolled and closed it like 3 times before I sat down and actually read it, because it was that long. But there was a lot of little interesting clips. Not all of it. Some of it's user privacy. Some of it is, I would say, Amazon negligence amongst their employees. Some of it is kind of shady behavior. There's a little bit of kind of everything in here. The article is obviously always a little clickbaity, but there is a good amount of information. But definitely some nuggets of truth in there that kind of got exposed. So this memo from 2018 that we've got on the screen here, more than half of third-party developers the company had researched were violating Amazon's terms of service, basically. Basically, the rules were for how sellers and developers were supposed to use the system based on customer orders and data and things like that. So clearly, I would say negligence, or maybe just a lack of care, or kind of like turning a blind eye. It's kind of like when Bezos was on testifying with Congress, and he was like, I don't think we look at purchase data for for competitors before coming up with a product. And it's like, I don't know, that's not our policy. But just because something's not a policy, or like maybe your policy is not to do something, great. But you could like wink, wink, officially on paper, we're not supposed to do this. But if you're on the team and you're told, figure it out at all costs, wink, wink, there's this tool you could probably use, but I didn't tell you to do it, then it's against policy, and you can basically shift blame from from leadership to a few bad actors, which I think is kind of a good theme of this entire thing, where it goes through a lot. Was there certain segments that stuck out to you guys more than others? Because I don't want to rant too much, but figure if there's.
I couldn't even get through the entire article. It's damn long. But part of it tells that's what happens when the company gets really, really big. What they have over 1 million employees now, and there's no way a single person or even a team or a group can understand what's going on with all the data out there, especially when you have so many teams. Remember, Amazon had this rule where you cannot have large teams out there.
Two pizzas.
Two pizza rule. So with that, there are going to be a lot of teams, and they'll need this data, and very soon we quickly run out of control. And that's what's happened here. I think 1 million plus employees. There's no way they can have control of this.
Out of that billion, that might be like 3/4 is probably fulfillment and delivery, right? So outside of like maybe corporate environment.
It must have been Amazon month, because Fast Company had this Amazon Unpack, and you mentioned the amount of employees. So how many? Let's take a guess. How many do you say they have? Because I have a number here.
Over 1 million, 1.2 million is my guess.
Okay. What, Tejas, you got a guess there?
Yeah, total count, that sounds about right.
Okay. The fact that they've added about 100,000 employees this past year, generally 10-20% addition. 10% addition sounds about right.
Okay, you very close. So and this was this month's Fast Company. So as of whenever they printed this thing, 1,335,000 number of full-time and part-time Amazon employees globally, excluding contractors and temporary personnel.
Oh.
Wow.
Could be more. That bumps to 1.6.
150% annual turnover rate of Amazon's hourly associates, reportedly.
150% turnover? 150?
150% annual turnover rate of Amazon's hourly associates, reportedly.
How can you have over 100%?
So that's a lot of different people coming in every year.
Or maybe that means like you get hired and you stay for 3 months and you quit, and then the next person came for 3 months and quit. Then that's how you get over 100% turnover, right? Basically, multiple people are quitting within a year, which is that's pretty bad. Pretty bad situation.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any other. Okay. All right. Here's one. 460% increase during the pandemic of employees who applied to the Amazon Technical Academy, an upskilling program that helps employees become software engineers in 9 months. So, I mean, the scale that they operate on is unheard of, really.
I think it'll likely end up being split into multiple companies, and that is now becoming, I guess, a trend. GE splitting, we have seen now Toshiba splitting. Mm-hmm. There's another company, I think, that's going down. Johnson & Johnson. So there are a few others in that, and it makes sense because of the crazy valuations. Every company is now $1 billion company, right? I think this week I've seen Grammarly,
13 billion.
13 billion. For comparison, Dropbox is about 10, and Box is about 2 or 3, somewhere around that. So with all the crazy valuations, everyone will check in. Recently, I had some other company, irrelevant industry, that basically said we are getting into EV market, and their market cap doubled or tripled overnight, or some such thing.
Just by saying that.
By saying that. So tomorrow, if let's say Grammarly says we are getting into EV market, expect it to be $100 billion company. So I think Amazon, given the current market and valuations, it makes sense to Amazon to split into multiple companies, at least to bring in some sanity. Otherwise, yeah, it's too big.
Yeah, I mean the first slide Brent had, sorry, was I think the most telling, right? One of them said, according to internal documents, Amazon's vast empire of customer data has become so sprawling, fragmented, and promiscuously shared within the company, the security division couldn't even map all of it, much less adequately defend its border. So, like, as the company grows to that size, you're going to have, the amount of compliance and controls you can have obviously start going out the window, right? Like all these different teams of 10, 12, it's hard to manage.
And I think in one of the early episodes, you were talking about trying to grab your Amazon data, right? And it took them forever to even get to. Well, this is the reason.
Yeah, and just some other kind of the amount of data that they're dealing with. There's this fast company. It says Amazon Unpacked from A to Z. So every section starts with a letter.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so it goes literally from A to Z. I'm on F for fakes, and it says as Amazon grows, so does its battle against fraudsters, facing pressures from shoppers, brands, and Congress, and following instances in which customers listen to this, in which customers died or were injured by products that didn't meet government safety standards. The company destroyed more than 2 million counterfeit products in 2020 alone and blocked more than 10 billion suspect listings. That the data, and it's not just the amount of data, it's the disparate places it's coming from. They've got hundreds of thousands of sellers, and they have to try to keep track of them in addition to the stuff that they do. Yeah, I can see where Amazon is faced with a lot of things that maybe who could have foreseen when they first initially started doing it. It's the scale that makes it hard to even keep track of all this stuff, like Raju was saying.
There was one article I read earlier about the returns. I think it's a fascinating read where it is cheaper to not take the item back or even burn them instead of trying to even return them. And the logistics of that is scary. So we have optimized this entire thing for certain supply chain things. I think those are all going to be reset, in the next decade or two. I think we're going to see, with the current supply chain challenges and the global reset that's going on, the entire supply chain industry is going to go through a massive shift. All of a sudden, now it's becoming cheaper to use air freight than bring in a container, and that has implications.
Yeah, I think the only saving grace is like as these like the few the most biggest companies like your Amazon, Facebook, Google's, you kind of hope that there's like some level of incompetence as they get so big that's the only thing like holding them back from probably truly doing scary stuff. They're just like moving slowly because they're probably fragmented and have a lot to deal with. But if it was a little bit more of a well-oiled machine, I think we would be in a lot scarier situation. So that's kind of a blessing in disguise a little bit, right?
When you lose control and you don't want to be associated with it, then the founder leaves. Or what happened to? It might be a little harsh, but that's what I see.
He goes to space. Is that what you're saying?
No, the Amazon. After Page left, the real Google showed up.
Okay.
After Bezos left, the real Amazon who maximize all the information and the data and everything that they had, they'll maximize and suck everything out of it. And I think we are entering that phase of Amazon. It becomes, if anything, I expect Amazon to explode even bigger, even further.
Oof. Wow. Okay, we're at 11:48. We could keep talking all day on this stuff, but I guess we got to figure out when to take a time out for the week. Huh?
Yeah. I'll try to end on a little bit of a note. I think I mentioned this article or this website before, or maybe a variation of it, but there is a website that I found online called privacyguides.org. And basically, it's like a super detailed website that has a lot of resources on like different tools you can use, how to protect your identity, and like what to do in certain situations, and just an insane amount of resources. So if there's one like positive note, some people or a group of people has put in an incredible amount of time building up this website with a lot of resources. So if you haven't checked it out already, privacyguides.org, someone made it, and it seems like a great resource. And so we'll probably learn a lot, and maybe we'll do a deeper dive on some of the topics that they cover as well. But just kind of a good thing to kind of check out over the weekend if you're looking for some fun activities. But yeah, like Brent said, we're kind of rolling on time here. So like, share, subscribe as always. Episode 20, didn't think we would get here. Go ahead, Raju.
Do we have an episode next week?
What is next week?
Thanksgiving.
Oh no, we'll be off next week. So hopefully nothing crazy in the privacy world happens. If not, we'll cover it the week after when we come back.
Oh yeah, I'm sure nothing's gonna happen for.
Yeah, nothing like Black Friday for privacy. All right, cool. Episode 20 is a big milestone. Maybe we'll have a party at 25 or something. We'll see. But thanks for joining, and see y'all in 2 weeks.
All righty.